The metal floor was cold under Jake Sullivan's boots as he walked through the mining deck of the ship New Liberty. The air smelled like burned metal and human sweat. Around him, hundreds of people worked with heavy tools, breaking apart rocks that came from dead planets far from Earth. Their faces were tired and dirty, but their eyes still held a spark that the aliens could not kill. Jake stopped next to a young man who was struggling with a large chunk of gray stone. The rock was full of blue crystals that glowed softly in the dim light. These crystals were what the Zephyrians wanted. They called the crystals quintessium, and they needed them for their weapons and ships. "Need help with that, Ben?" Jake asked. Ben Carter looked up. He was only 22 years old, but his face looked older because of the hard work and little food. "I can handle it," he said through gritted teeth. "I don't need help from anyone." Jake knew that anger. He had felt it every day for the past 5 years since the Zephyrians captured him. Before the aliens came, Jake had been an engineer in the Earth military. He had designed weapons and ships to protect his home planet. Now he used those same skills to make the aliens' mining operation run better. It made him sick, but he had learned that staying alive was more important than pride. A loud horn sounded through the ship. Work time was over for now. The humans put down their tools and walked slowly toward the eating area. Jake watched them go. These were farmers, teachers, soldiers, and scientists from Earth. The Zephyrians had taken the best and strongest humans to work as slaves. They left the weak and old behind to die. Jake walked to the small room where he lived with 3 other men. The room was barely big enough for 4 narrow beds and a tiny sink. There was no window, just cold metal walls. He sat on his bed and pulled out a small piece of metal he had been hiding. It was part of a Zephyrian control panel that had broken during the last work shift. Jake had been studying these pieces for months, trying to understand how the alien technology worked. The door opened and Maria Santos came in. She was supposed to be in the women's section, but Maria had ways of moving around the ship without being seen. She was small and quick, with dark hair and smart eyes. Before the war, she had worked with computers and communication systems. "We need to talk," Maria whispered. She looked around to make sure no one else was listening. "I got a message from the mining station near Jupiter. The Zephyrians are building something big, something that will make things much worse for humans. Everywhere." Jake put the metal piece under his pillow. "What kind of something?" "A weapon," Maria said. "The biggest weapon anyone has ever seen. They're going to use it to attack other planets with smart life. They want to make slaves out of everyone in the galaxy, not just humans." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Zephyrians were already cruel masters. They gave humans just enough food to keep working and just enough rest to stay alive. They beat anyone who worked too slowly or complained. Sometimes they killed humans just to scare the others. If they got a superweapon, things would become much worse. "How do you know this?" Jake asked. "Lisa Monroe told me," Maria said. "She works in the medical bay, remember? She heard 2 Zephyrian officers talking about it. They didn't think a human doctor would understand their language, but Lisa has been learning it secretly." Jake nodded. Lisa was smart and careful. If she said the aliens were planning something big, it was probably true. "There's more," Maria continued. "The crystals we're mining here, they're the main power source for this weapon. Every day we work, we're helping them build something that will hurt millions of innocent people." Jake clenched his fists. He had known that their work was helping the enemy, but he had told himself it was just to keep their ships running. Now, he learned they were building a weapon of mass destruction. "We have to do something," he said. "I know," Maria replied. "But what? We're just slaves on one ship. The Zephyrians have thousands of ships and millions of soldiers. Even if we could take over this ship, where would we go? Earth is destroyed. Most human colonies are under Zephyrian control." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out the metal piece again. "Maybe we can't win a war," he said, "but we can make them pay a price. I've been studying their technology. It's advanced, but it has weaknesses. If we're smart and careful, we might be able to cause some real damage." Maria looked at the metal piece. "You think you can figure out how to break their systems?" "Maybe," Jake said. "But I'll need help. and we'll need to be very careful. If they catch us, they won't just kill us. They'll make examples of us to scare everyone else. The next morning, Jake watched as Ben Carter walked up to a Zephyrian guard during work time. The alien was tall and covered in green scales. Its eyes were yellow and cold. Ben had a piece of broken mining equipment in his hands. "This tool is broken," Ben said loudly. "How do you expect us to work with broken tools?" The guard looked down at Ben like he was looking at an insect. "Human slave will work with what human slave is given," the alien said in broken English. "No," Ben said. "I won't work with broken tools anymore. I won't help you build weapons to hurt innocent people." Jake felt his heart stop. Ben was going to get himself killed, and probably get other humans punished too. The guard raised its weapon, a long rod that could deliver painful electric shocks. "Human slave will obey or human slave will be punished." "Go ahead," Ben said. "Punish me. Kill me if you want. But I won't be your slave anymore." Other humans had stopped working to watch. The Zephyrian guard looked around nervously. It pressed a button on its uniform to call for backup. 2 more guards arrived quickly. One of them was an officer with silver marks on its uniform. The officer looked at Ben, then at the other humans who were watching. "This human slave refuses to work," the first guard reported. The officer nodded slowly. Jake could see it thinking. The Zephyrians ruled through fear, but they also needed the humans to keep working. If they were too harsh, the humans might stop working altogether. If they were too soft, the humans might rebel. "Bring the human slave to the punishment chamber," the officer decided. "All other human slaves will watch. They will learn what happens to those who disobey." Jake wanted to help Ben, but he knew it would only make things worse. He watched helplessly as the guards dragged Ben away. Around him, other humans went back to work, but their movements were angry and quick. Jake could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. That evening, all the humans were forced to watch as Ben Carter was executed in the ship's main hall. The Zephyrians used a device that caused terrible pain before death. Ben screamed, but he never begged for mercy. His last words were, "Remember me." As Jake watched his friend die, he felt something change inside him. The fear was still there, but now there was something stronger. Anger. Pure, burning anger that made his hands shake and his vision go red. The Zephyrians thought they had sent a message about the price of rebellion. But they had made a mistake. They had created something much more dangerous than a rebel. They had created a man with nothing left to lose and the skills to make them pay for their cruelty. That night, Jake Sullivan began planning the end of the Zephyrian Empire. 3 days after Ben Carter died, Jake Sullivan could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ben's face and heard his last words. "Remember me." The words echoed in Jake's mind like a promise he had to keep. Jake got up from his narrow bed and walked quietly to the small table where he kept his hidden collection of Zephyrian metal pieces. His roommates were sleeping, but Jake had learned to move without making noise. He picked up a small device he had built from the broken alien parts. It looked like a simple tool, but Jake had turned it into something that could listen to Zephyrian radio signals. He put on the tiny earpiece he had made and turned on the device. Static filled his ear, then voices speaking in the Zephyrian language. Jake had been learning their language secretly, just like Lisa Monroe. It was hard work, but he was getting better at understanding them. Tonight, the voices sounded worried. They were talking about problems at other mining stations. Humans were working slower than before. Some were breaking tools on purpose. Others were getting sick more often and could not work. The Zephyrians did not understand why this was happening all at the same time. Jake smiled in the darkness. Maria had been busy. The next morning, Maria Santos found Jake in the mining area. She pretended to check on some equipment while she talked to him quietly. "I made contact with 7 more stations," she whispered. "The message is spreading. Humans everywhere are remembering Ben Carter." Jake kept working while he listened. Around them, other humans were moving more slowly than usual. They were not openly rebelling, but they were doing small things to cause problems. A tool would break at the wrong time. A worker would suddenly feel dizzy, and need to rest. A machine would stop working because someone had put the wrong type of crystal in it. What about the big weapon they're building? Jake asked. Lisa learned more about it, Maria said. It's called the Star Killer. The Zephyrians plan to use it to destroy any planet that fights back. They want to scare everyone in the galaxy into giving up without a fight. Jake felt sick. The crystals they mined every day were going to power a weapon that could kill entire worlds. We have to stop it. I know, Maria said. But how? Before Jake could answer, they heard heavy footsteps. A Zephyrian guard was walking toward them. Jake and Maria went back to their normal work and did not look at each other again. That evening, Jake was surprised when a new person joined him at dinner. The man was older, maybe 50 years old, with gray hair and scars on his hands. His eyes were sharp and alert like a soldier's eyes. I'm Carl Johnson, the man said quietly. I heard you're the engineer who knows about alien technology. Jake was careful with his answer. I know some things. Why? Because I know some things, too, Carl said. I was on Earth when the Zephyrians first attacked. I fought in the last battle before Earth fell. I've been waiting 5 years for someone smart enough to help me fight back. Jake studied Carl's face. The man looked honest, but Jake had learned to be careful about trusting anyone. What kind of help do you need? The kind that can turn mining equipment into weapons, Carl said. The kind that can figure out how to take control of alien systems. The kind that can help me contact my old team. Your old team? Carl smiled, but it was not a happy smile. 23 human soldiers scattered across different Zephyrian ships. We've been pretending to be broken and defeated for 5 years, waiting for the right moment. I think that moment is coming soon. Jake felt his heart beat faster. Why now? Because of what happened to Ben Carter, Carl said. Word is spreading to every human in the galaxy. People are starting to hope again. Hope is dangerous to the Zephyrians, but it's exactly what we need. Later that night, Jake met with Maria and Carl in a storage room deep in the ship. Maria had brought Lisa Monroe, the doctor who had been learning the Zephyrian language. Lisa looked nervous but determined. I have news, Lisa said. I overheard the ship's commander talking to his officers. They're worried about the slowdowns at all the mining stations. They think it might be organized resistance. Are they right? Carl asked with a grin. Not yet, Maria said. But they could be. I've been in contact with humans at 47 different locations. They're all ready to do more than just work slowly. Jake pulled out a rough drawing he had made. I've been studying the ship's systems. The Zephyrians are smart, but they make mistakes. They assume humans are too stupid to understand their technology. They don't guard their control systems very well. What are you thinking? Carl asked. I'm thinking we could take control of some systems on this ship, Jake said. Maybe the communication array, maybe even the engines. Lisa shook her head. That's too dangerous. If we get caught, they won't just kill us. They'll torture us first to find out who else is involved. She's right, Maria said. We need to be smarter. Start small. Test their defenses. Learn what we can get away with. Carl nodded. In the old Earth military, we called that reconnaissance. You scout the enemy before you attack. Jake thought about this. I might know a way to start. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs behind the main computer room. I could get in there and plant some listening devices. We could learn what the Zephyrians are planning. That's still risky, Lisa said. Everything is risky now, Jake replied. But doing nothing is the biggest risk of all. Every day we wait, more humans die. Every day we mine these crystals, we help them build weapons to hurt innocent people. Maria looked at each of them. If we do this, there's no going back. Once we start fighting, we'll have to keep fighting until we win or until we're all dead. I've been dead inside for 5 years, Carl said. I'd rather die fighting than live as a slave. Ben Carter died so we would remember that we're human, Jake added. Humans don't stay slaves forever. We fight. We never give up. We find a way to win. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. I'm in. But we need to be very careful. The Zephyrians have other ways to hurt us besides killing us. They could make life much worse for all the humans on this ship. They could, Jake agreed. But they need us alive and healthy enough to work. That gives us some protection, and if we're smart about it, they might not even know we're fighting back until it's too late. Over the next few days, Jake worked on building better listening devices. Maria expanded her secret communication network. Carl began identifying which humans might be willing to take bigger risks. Lisa gathered medical supplies and information about Zephyrian biology. They were careful to keep their normal routines. Jake still supervised the mining work. Maria still maintained the communication equipment. Carl still did his assigned labor. Lisa still treated sick and injured humans in the medical bay. But now they had a purpose beyond just surviving. They were preparing for war. On the 7th night after Ben's death, Jake crawled through the maintenance tunnel toward the computer room. He carried 3 small devices he had built from Zephyrian parts. Each device could record conversations and transmit them to a receiver he had hidden in his room. The tunnel was dark and cramped. Jake had to move very slowly to avoid making noise. It took him almost an hour to reach the computer room. Through a small grate, he could see 2 Zephyrian technicians working at their stations. Jake carefully removed the grate and placed his first listening device inside the computer room. He was reaching for the second device when he heard footsteps in the tunnel behind him. Someone was coming. Jake froze. If he was caught here, it would not just mean his death. It would mean the end of their resistance before it really began. He quickly finished placing the second device and started crawling back toward the exit as fast as he could move quietly. The footsteps were getting closer. Jake reached a junction where the tunnel split in 2 directions. He could hear voices, now, Zephyrian voices. They were doing some kind of inspection. Jake chose the left tunnel and crawled as fast as he could. Behind him, he heard the aliens reach the junction. They paused. Then one of them started following the right tunnel. Jake had chosen correctly. 20 minutes later, Jake was back in his room. His heart was beating so hard, he thought it might wake up his roommates. But he had done it. They now had ears inside the enemy's most important room. The next morning, Jake listened to the first recordings from his devices. What he heard made him smile for the first time since Ben Carter died. The Zephyrians were scared. They knew something was happening, but they did not know what. They were starting to doubt whether humans were as weak and stupid as they had believed. Jake thought about Ben's last words again. Remember me. He was remembering. They all were. And soon, the Zephyrians would learn what happened when humans remembered who they really were. 2 weeks after Jake placed the listening devices, everything changed. The information they gathered from the Zephyrian computer room was better than they had hoped. Jake learned the security codes for different parts of the ship. Maria discovered the locations of weapons storage areas. Carl found out which guards worked at what times and where they were weakest. But the most important thing they learned was that the Zephyrians were planning to move most of the humans to a new location. A place called Mining Station 7, where the work was harder and the living conditions were much worse. The aliens wanted to punish all humans because of the slowdowns and small acts of resistance. They're going to separate us, Maria told the group during a secret meeting in the storage room. Families will be split up. Friends will never see each other again. They want to break our spirits completely. Lisa looked worried. When is this supposed to happen? In 5 days, Jake said. He had heard the Zephyrian commander talking about, and they're bringing transport ships to take half the humans away. The other half will stay here, but with much stricter rules. Carl pounded his fist quietly against the wall. We can't let that happen. Once they split us up, organizing any kind of resistance will become almost impossible. So what do we do? Lisa asked. Jake had been thinking about this question for days. We fight back, now, before they can separate us. Fight back how? Maria asked. We don't have weapons. We don't have ships. All we have are mining tools and the things Jake has built from stolen parts. Sometimes that's enough, Carl said. I've been talking to people quietly, carefully. There are at least 60 humans on this ship who are ready to take risks. Real risks. Jake pulled out a drawing he had been working on. It showed the layout of the ship with important areas marked in different colors. I figured out how we can take control of the New Liberty. It won't be easy and some of us will probably die. But if we do it right, we can win. He pointed to different parts of his drawing as he explained his plan. First, we take the engine room. Without engines, the ship can't go anywhere or call for help easily. Second, we take the communication center. We cut off their ability to contact other Zephyrian ships. Third, we take the weapon storage areas and arm ourselves properly. What about the guards? Lisa asked. That's where timing is important, Carl said. I know their patrol schedules. There's a 20-minute window during the night shift change when security is weakest. If we move fast and stay coordinated, we can hit all our targets before they can organize a defense. Maria shook her head. Even if we take the ship, then what? Where do we go? The Zephyrians will just send other ships to hunt us down. Maybe, Jake said. But I've been listening to their communications. They're having problems at mining stations all across this part of the galaxy. If we can inspire other humans to fight back too, the Zephyrians won't be able to hunt down everyone. Over the next 3 days, they prepared. Carl recruited people he trusted and began organizing them into teams. Maria worked on ways to send messages to humans at other locations once they took control of the communication system. Lisa gathered medical supplies and studied Zephyrian anatomy in case they needed to treat injuries or deal with alien prisoners. Jake worked on building weapons from mining equipment. He turned cutting tools into energy blasters. He modified heavy lifting devices into portable shields. He even figured out how to make bombs from the crystal power cells they used every day. Tian. Night before the planned uprising, Jake could not eat dinner. His stomach was too nervous. Around him, other humans were acting normal, but he could see the tension in their faces. Tomorrow, they would either win their freedom or die trying. Tony Rodriguez sat down next to Jake. Tony was a pilot who had been captured when his ship was shot down during a supply run to a human colony. He was tough and smart, and he had volunteered to lead the team that would capture the ship's hangar bay. You ready for tomorrow? Tony asked quietly. As ready as I can be, Jake replied. You? I've been ready for this fight since the day they captured me, Tony said. I just hope we can pull it off. Jake looked around the eating area. He saw faces he had come to know well over the past months. Some of these people would not be alive tomorrow night. The thought made him sad, but it also made him more determined. They were fighting for something bigger than just their own lives. They were fighting for the idea that humans should be free. The attack began at exactly midnight. Jake's team moved through the maintenance tunnels toward the engine room, while Carl's team headed for the weapon storage. Tony's group went to the hangar bay and Maria's team aimed for the communication center. Jake had 6 people with him, including a strong woman named Amy Walsh, who had been a scientist before the war. She was carrying one of Jake's homemade energy weapons and looked ready to use it. They reached the engine room without being seen. Through the door window, Jake could see 2 Zephyrian technicians working at the main control panels. The aliens looked relaxed and bored. They had no idea what was about to happen. Jake used one of the security codes he had learned from the listening devices. The door opened silently. His team moved in fast and quiet. Don't move, Jake said in the Zephyrian language, pointing his weapon at the surprised technicians. The aliens looked shocked. One of them reached for an alarm button, but Amy was faster. Her energy blast hit the alien's hand and sent him spinning to the floor. Tie them up, Jake ordered. His team had brought rope made from torn clothing. Within minutes, both Zephyrian technicians were bound and gagged. Jake moved to the main engine controls. He had studied these systems for weeks, but actually touching them felt strange and exciting. With a few key commands, he shut down the ship's main engines and locked out the restart sequences. The New Liberty was now dead in space. At the same time, explosions echoed through other parts of the ship. Carl's team had reached the weapon storage and was fighting Zephyrian guards. The sound of energy weapons firing filled the air. Jake's communication device crackled. It was Maria's voice. Communication center secured. We control all outgoing signals. Then Tony's voice came through. Hangar bay taken. We have 6 fighter ships and a transport vessel. But Carl's voice sounded worried when he reported. Heavy resistance at weapon storage. We got the weapons, but the Zephyrians are organizing a counterattack. They're bringing soldiers from all over the ship. Jake looked at his team. Time to go help the others. Amy, stay here and guard the engines. Don't let anyone restart them. What if more Zephyrians come? Amy asked. Jake handed her an extra weapon. Then you fight, we all fight. That's what humans do. Jake and his remaining team members moved through the ship toward the weapons storage area. Along the way, they met other humans who had joined the Tao uprising. Some carried mining tools turned into weapons. Others had stolen Zephyrian equipment. All of them looked determined. The battle for the weapons storage was fierce. The Zephyrians had brought 20 soldiers, and they were using heavy weapons that could punch holes through the ship's walls. But the humans fought with desperate courage, using their knowledge of the ship's layout to attack from unexpected directions. Jake saw Carl leading a charge against a group of Zephyrian soldiers. The older man was using a modified cutting tool, like a sword, and he moved with the skill of someone who had fought in real wars before. But then Jake saw something that made his blood run cold. More Zephyrian soldiers were coming from behind Carl's position. Carl and his team would be trapped between 2 groups of enemies. Jake did not think. He just acted. He grabbed one of his homemade bombs and ran toward the approaching soldiers. Get down! He yelled to the other humans. The explosion was louder than Jake had expected. The blast knocked him to the ground and made his ears ring. But when the smoke cleared, the Zephyrian soldiers were gone. Some were dead, others were badly injured. Carl helped Jake to his feet. Nice work, engineer, he said with a grin. The fighting continued for 2 more hours. But the humans had advantages the Zephyrians did not expect. They knew every corner of the ship. They could move through maintenance tunnels and service areas that the aliens barely knew existed. Most importantly, they fought with the fury of people who had been slaves too long and would rather die than go back to chains. By dawn, the new liberty belonged to the humans. 53 Zephyrians were dead, and the rest were prisoners. The humans had lost 12 people, including 2 of Jake's friends from the mining crew. Their deaths hurt, but their sacrifice had meaning. Maria established contact with human groups at other mining stations and colonies. The news of their victory spread quickly. Within hours, uprisings began at 7 other locations. Jake stood on the bridge of the New Liberty, looking at the star charts the Zephyrians had been using. For the first time in years, he could choose where to go next. The feeling was so strange he almost cried. Tony joined him at the navigation controls. So where do we go now, Jake? Jake thought about all the human slaves still working at other Zephyrian facilities. He thought about the Starkiller weapon being built with crystals mined by human hands. He thought about Ben Carter's last words. We go where we're needed most, Jake said. We go free more slaves. We go stop that weapon. We go show the galaxy that humans don't stay down when you knock us down. 3 weeks after taking the New Liberty, Jake Sullivan stood in what used to be the Zephyrian commander's office. Now it was his workshop, filled with alien technology he was learning to rebuild and improve. The humans had renamed their ship, the Freedom's Call, and it was no longer alone in space. 2 more ships floated nearby. The Defiance was a former Zephyrian cargo vessel that Tony Rodriguez had helped capture during a raid on a supply station. The Hope's Light was a mining ship that had been taken over by humans at the Jupiter facility. Together, the 3 ships carried over 1,500 freed slaves and enough firepower to worry the Zephyrian Empire. Jake was working on a new type of weapon when Maria Santos rushed into the room. Her face was excited but also worried. Jake, you need to hear this, she said. She turned on the communication system they had captured from the Zephyrians. Voices filled the room, speaking in different languages from across the galaxy. This is the Kepler mining station, said one voice. We have broken free from Zephyrian control, requesting assistance from any human ships in the area. Aurora Colony calling all resistance forces, said another voice. We have defeated the Zephyrian garrison but expect counterattack soon. Can anyone help us? Trading Post Gamma 7 has declared independence, said a third voice. The Zephyrian tax collectors are dead. We are ready to fight. Jake listened with amazement. The rebellion was spreading faster than they had hoped. How many uprisings are happening right now? At least 23 that we know of, Maria replied. And it's not just humans anymore. The Altarians on the Vega system have joined the fight. So have the cetaceans from the water worlds. Even some Zephyrian colonies are rebelling against the Empire. This was incredible news, but Jake could see the worry in Maria's eyes. What's the bad news? The Zephyrians are fighting back, she said. Hard. They've sent Admiral Vexithera with a battle fleet to crush the rebellions. He's already destroyed 2 human colonies that refused to surrender. Jake had heard of Admiral Vexithera. The Zephyrian was known for his cruelty even among his own people. He did not just defeat enemies. He made examples of them that were meant to terrify others into giving up. Where is he heading next? Jake asked. According to our intelligence, he's going to attack the Aurora colony, Maria said. They have 12,000 humans there, including women and children. If Vexithara takes the colony, he'll kill everyone to send a message to other rebels. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Aurora colony was one of the first places to join their rebellion. The people there had risked everything because they believed in the fight for freedom. Now they were about to pay with their lives. How long do we have? Jake asked. Maybe 4 days before Vexithera reaches Aurora, Maria said. Jake looked at the star charts on his wall. Aurora colony was 2 days away at maximum speed. Even if they left right now, they would barely have time to prepare a defense. Send a message to Tony and the others, Jake said. Emergency meeting in 1 hour, we're going to war. An hour later, the leaders of the 3 human ships met in the Freedom's Call's main meeting room. Besides Jake and Maria, there was Tony, Rodriguez from the Defiance, Carl Johnson, who now commanded the Hope's Light, Lisa Monroe, who had become their chief medical officer, and Amy Walsh, who had proven to be a brilliant strategist. We all know why we're here, Jake began. Aurora colony is going to be attacked by the strongest Zephyrian fleet in this sector. If we don't help them, 12,000 humans will die. What are we facing exactly? Asked Tony. Amy had studied the intelligence reports. Admiral Vexithera has 15 heavy cruisers, 37 destroyers, and hundreds of fighter ships. His flagship alone has more firepower than all 3 of our ships combined. The room was quiet. Everyone understood what those numbers meant. Even with all the improvements Jake had made to their weapons, they were vastly outgunned. So we run. Away? Asked a voice from the back of the room. It was Pete Morgan, one of the freed slaves who had become a ship's officer. We let those people die? No, said Carl firmly. We don't run. We fight. That's what humans do. Fighting is not the same as dying uselessly, Amy pointed out. We need to be smart about this. Find a way to win, not just a way to die bravely. Jake had been thinking about this problem since Maria first told him about the threat. What if we don't fight their fleet directly? What if we use their own tactics against them? What do you mean? Lisa asked. Jake moved to the star chart display. The Zephyrians always attack the same way. They surround a target, demand surrender, then destroy everything if they don't get it. They expect their enemies to either give up or fight back in a predictable way. But we're not predictable, Maria said, starting to understand. Exactly, Jake replied. We don't fight like Zephyrians. We don't even fight like the old human military. We fight like people who have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Over the next day, as their ships raced toward Aurora colony, Jake worked on modifications that would give them every possible advantage. He figured out how to overload their weapon systems for short bursts of incredible power. He designed new types of bombs that could be launched from mining equipment. Most importantly, he found a way to turn their ship's crystal mining arrays into powerful communication jammers. When they arrived at Aurora colony, they found a community preparing for war. The colonists had built defensive barriers and armed themselves with whatever weapons they could make or steal. But everyone knew it would not be enough against a full Zephyrian battle fleet. Jake met with the colony's leaders in the main meeting hall. These were farmers, teachers, and small business owners who had never expected to fight a war. but their faces showed the same determination he had seen in his own crew. "We're not giving up," said Sandra Davis, the colony's elected leader. "Even if we can't win, we're going to make them pay for every life they take." "You're not going to die," Jake told her. "We have a plan." He explained his strategy to the colonists and his own crew. It was risky and required perfect timing, but it might work. 2 days later, Admiral Vexithera's fleet arrived at Aurora Colony. The Zephyrian ships formed their usual attack formation, surrounding the planet completely. Vexithera's flagship, the Eternal Domination, moved into position to broadcast his surrender demand. "Humans of Aurora Colony," the Admiral's voice echoed across all communication channels. "You have rebelled against the lawful authority of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender immediately, and only half of you will be executed as an example. Continue to resist, and every man, woman, and child will die slowly." Jake listened to this message. From his position in the asteroid field near the colony, his 3 ships were hidden among the space rocks, invisible to Zephyrian sensors. Around him, his crew waited for his signal. "This is Aurora Colony," Sandra Davis responded to the Admiral. "We will never surrender to slavers and murderers. Come, and take us if you can." Admiral Vexithera's response was immediate and brutal. His fleet began bombarding the colony's outer defenses with massive energy weapons. The colonists fired back with everything they had, but their weapons barely scratched the Zephyrian ships. Jake watched the attack begin and felt sick. People were dying down there, good people who only wanted to be free. But he forced himself to wait. Timing was everything. "All Zephyrian ships are focused on the planet," reported Amy from her sensor station. "They're not watching for threats from outside the attack formation." "Perfect," Jake said. He opened communication to all 3 human ships. "This is it, everyone. Remember, we're not trying to defeat their entire fleet. We just need to hurt them badly enough to make them think twice about future attacks." The human ships burst out of the asteroid field at full speed, heading straight for the rear of the Zephyrian formation. Jake's communication jammers activated, preventing the enemy from coordinating their defense. Tony's ship launched a spread of Jake's special bombs toward the Zephyrian supply vessels. Carl's ship targeted the enemy communication arrays with precise weapon fire. The Zephyrians were caught completely by surprise. They had been so focused on attacking the planet that they had forgotten to watch their backs. Several enemy ships exploded before they could even turn to face the new threat. But Admiral Vexithera was not a fool. Within minutes, he had reorganized his fleet and was sending ships to deal with the human attackers. The battle became a deadly game of cat and mouse among the asteroids, with the humans using their superior knowledge of space combat to stay one step ahead of the larger Zephyrian force. Jake's ship shook as enemy fire hit their shields. "Hull damage on Deck 3, reported Lisa over the communication system. "But we're still flying." "Jake," Tony's voice came through the radio. "I'm seeing something strange. Some of the Zephyrian ships are pulling back from the planet." Jake checked his sensors and smiled. The plan was working. The Zephyrians were starting to realize that this was not a normal battle. The humans were not fighting to win territory or destroy the enemy fleet. They were fighting to prove that attacking human colonies would always be expensive and dangerous. "Admiral Vexithera is requesting communication," reported Maria. "Put him through," Jake said. The Zephyrian Admiral's face appeared on their main screen. His yellow eyes were full of rage, but Jake could also see something else. Uncertainty. 6 months after the battle at Aurora Colony, Jake Sullivan barely recognized the man he used to be. He stood on the bridge of the new flagship Vengeance, watching dozens of human and alien ships prepare for their biggest mission yet. What had started as 3 captured vessels had grown into a fleet of over 200 ships. The rebellion was no longer just about human freedom. It had become a war to free the entire galaxy. Jake wore the blue uniform of the Free Coalition fleet, with the rank of admiral sewn onto his shoulders. It felt strange to have such an important title, but his people needed leaders, and Jake had proven he could win battles that seemed impossible. Amy Walsh approached with a data pad in her hands. She was now his chief of strategy and one of the smartest people Jake had ever met. "The final intelligence reports are in," she said. "The Starkiller weapon is almost finished. Our spies inside the Zephyrian construction facility say they'll be ready to test it in 2 weeks." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Starkiller was the weapon that could destroy entire planets. If the Zephyrians finished building it, they could end the rebellion by simply destroying every world that opposed them. "What's the target for the test?" Jake asked. "Earth," Amy said quietly. Jake closed his eyes. Earth was already a dead world, destroyed during the first Zephyrian invasion. But millions of humans still lived in the ruins trying to rebuild their home planet. The Zephyrians would kill them all just to test their new weapon. "Then we stop them," Jake said. "Whatever it takes." Maria Santos joined them at the bridge's main table. She was now the Coalition's head of intelligence, coordinating spy networks across dozens of worlds. "I have good news and bad news," she said. "The good news is that we know exactly where the Starkiller is being built. It's at the Zirian shipyard in the heart of Zephyrian space." "What's the bad news?" Jake asked. "It's the most heavily defended location in the galaxy," Maria replied. 300 warships, orbital defense platforms, energy shields that can stop anything we've ever built. Oh, and it's surrounded by a minefield that stretches for millions of miles in every direction. Tony Rodriguez, who now commanded the Coalition's fighter squadrons, looked up from his own reports. "So basically it's impossible to attack." "Impossible. For a normal fleet," Jake corrected. "But we're not a normal fleet." Over the next week, Jake worked on the most complex plan he had ever created. It would require perfect coordination between dozens of different groups, timing that could not be off by even a few minutes, and technology that had never been tested in real combat. The plan had 3 parts. First, Carl Johnson would lead a diversionary attack on a major Zephyrian military base on the other side of their territory. This would draw away some of the ships defending the Zirion shipyard. Second, Maria's spy network would sabotage the shipyard's communication systems, preventing them from calling for help quickly. Third, Jake would lead the main attack force directly into the heart of the facility. "It's still suicide," Lisa Monroe pointed out during the final planning meeting. She was now the Coalition's chief medical officer and had saved hundreds of lives during their battles. "Even with the diversion and sabotage, we're talking about attacking the strongest fortress in known space." "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But if we don't try, billions of people will die when they finish that weapon. Sometimes you have to risk everything to save everything." The night before the attack, Jake could not sleep. He walked through the corridors of his ship, visiting the different sections where his crew was preparing. In the engineering bay, technicians were making final adjustments to their weapons. In the medical bay, doctors were setting up emergency treatment areas. In the hangar, pilots were checking their fighters one last time. Jake stopped to talk with some of the newer crew members. Many of them were aliens who had joined the Coalition after being freed from Zephyrian slavery. There were Altarians with their blue skin and 4 arms, Cetaceans who needed water tanks to breathe, and even a few reformed Zephyrians who had turned against their own empire. "Admiral," said one of the Altarian engineers, "my people want you to know that we are honored to fight beside humans. You showed us that freedom is possible." Jake felt a weight of responsibility on his shoulders. These people were trusting him with their lives and the future of their worlds. He could not let them down. The attack began at dawn, ship time. Carl's diversionary force struck the Zephyrian base at Proxima Station with everything they had. The explosion was so bright, it could be seen on planets light years away. As planned, the Zephyrians sent 60 ships from the Zirian shipyard to help defend Proxima Station. At the same time, Maria's saboteurs activated computer viruses they had secretly placed in the shipyard systems. Communication arrays went offline, sensor networks began reporting false information, and automated defense systems started firing at each other instead of incoming threats. Jake's main attack force jumped out of hyperspace just outside the shipyard's minefield. 200 ships, the largest fleet the Coalition had ever assembled, faced the massive Zephyrian construction facility. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan," Jake broadcast to his fleet. Today we end the Zephyrian Empire's ability to destroy worlds. Today we show them that no one is safe from justice, not even in the heart of their own territory. Remember Ben Carter. Remember Aurora Colony. Remember every human who died as a slave. Make them count. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Jake's ships moved through the minefield using new navigation technology that Amy had developed. Coalition fighters, led by Tony Rodriguez, engaged Zephyrian defenders in massive dogfights among the construction platforms. Human Marines, trained by Carl Johnson before he left for his diversion mission, boarded enemy stations and fought room by room. The Zephyrians fought desperately to protect their ultimate weapon. Admiral Vexathera himself commanded the defense, from his flagship, the Eternal Domination. But the humans and their allies had learned how to fight in ways that the rigid Zephyrian military could not understand or counter. Jake led a boarding party onto the main construction platform where the Starkiller was being built. The weapon was enormous, larger than most space stations, with crystal power cores that glowed with terrible energy. "Amy, can we destroy this thing?" Jake asked over his communication device. "If we overload the main power core, it should create a chain reaction," Amy replied from the Vengeance. "But you'll need to be very close to the core to make it work." Jake and his team fought their way through the facility, battling Zephyrian soldiers and automated defense systems. Many of his people were killed or wounded, but they kept moving forward. They had come too far to give up now. The main power core was in the center of the Starkiller, protected by layers of armor and energy shields. Jake used modified mining charges to blast through the barriers, while his team held off waves of enemy reinforcements. "Jake," Maria's voice came through his communicator. "The sabotage is wearing off. The Zephyrians are getting their communications back online. You need to hurry." Jake reached the power core and began setting his explosives. The core was beautiful in a terrible way, pulsing with enough energy to destroy planets. Soon, all that power would be turned against its creators. "Admiral," one of his Marines shouted. "Zephyrian reinforcements coming from all directions. We're surrounded." Jake finished arming the explosives and set the timer for 5 minutes. "Then we fight our way out. All teams, converge on my position. We're leaving now." The battle to escape. The Starkiller was fierce. Zephyrian soldiers attacked from every direction, desperate to stop the humans from destroying their ultimate weapon. Jake's team fought with the courage of people who knew their sacrifice would save countless lives. They made it to their transport ship with 30 seconds to spare. As they flew away from the construction platform, Jake watched the timer count. Down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The explosion was beyond description. The Starkiller's power core detonated with the force of a small star, vaporizing the entire construction facility and everything around it. The shockwave destroyed dozens of Zephyrian warships and crippled many more. Admiral Vexathara's flagship was caught in the explosion. Jake watched through his ship's sensors as the Eternal Domination broke apart and disappeared into the expanding ball of fire. The Coalition fleet escaped just ahead of the destruction, but the victory came at a high price. They had lost 47 ships and over 3,000 people. Jake felt each death like a personal failure, even though he knew they had saved billions of lives by destroying the Starkiller. As his fleet jumped back into hyperspace, Jake received reports from across the galaxy. The destruction of the Starkiller had shocked the Zephyrian Empire to its core. Several alien species were declaring independence. Some Zephyrian colonies were surrendering to Coalition forces rather than fight. "Jake," Amy said, showing him intelligence reports on her datapad. "The Zephyrian High Council is meeting an emergency session. Our spies say they're talking about negotiating an end to the war." Jake shook his head. "After everything they've done? After all the people they've killed and enslaved? No. This war ends when every slave is free and every Zephyrian warship is destroyed or surrendered." The fleet that approached Zephyr Prime was the largest armada in galactic history. Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching 500 Coalition ships drop out of hyperspace around the Zephyrian homeworld. Human vessels flew alongside Altarian cruisers, cetacean waterships, and dozens of other alien designs. All of them were united by one purpose: to end the Zephyrian Empire forever. "My God," whispered Tony Rodriguez as he looked at the planet through the main view screen. Zephyr Prime was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The world glowed with green and gold cities that stretched across entire continents. Massive space elevators reached up from the surface to orbital platforms. Ring-shaped space stations surrounded the planet like metal moons. "It's huge," said Maria Santos. "There must be 20 billion Zephyrians down there." "And how many slaves?" Jake asked quietly. Intelligence reports said that Zephyr Prime used slave labor from dozens of different species. Even on their homeworld, the Zephyrians could not build their civilization without forcing others to work for them. Amy Walsh checked her sensor readings. "The planetary defenses are incredible. Energy shields, orbital weapons platforms, automated defense satellites. They have over 800 warships protecting the planet." Jake nodded. He had expected this. The Zephyrians would defend their homeworld with everything they had. But Jake's fleet was not the same group of escaped slaves that had captured the New Liberty 2 years ago. These were battle-tested warriors who had learned to turn Zephyrian technology against its creators. "Open a channel to all ships," Jake ordered. When the communication link was established, he spoke to his entire fleet. "People of the Coalition, we have come to the end of our journey. Below us is the world that commands an empire built on slavery and death. Today, we tear down that empire and build something better in its place." Before Jake could continue, the Zephyrian defense fleet moved to attack. 800 enemy ships formed battle lines and began advancing on the coalition forces. At the same time, the planetary defense systems opened fire with energy beams that could destroy capital ships with single hits. "All ships engage the enemy," Jake commanded. "Remember, our goal is not just victory. We're here to free every slave on that planet and show the galaxy that tyrants can be defeated." The battle for Zephyr Prime began with a fury that shook space itself. Coalition ships used every trick they had learned during their long war. Human vessels equipped with Jake's improved weapon systems punched through Zephyrian shields like they were paper. Altarian fighters moved in complex patterns that confused enemy targeting systems. Cetacean ships released clouds of metallic particles that blinded Zephyrian sensors. But the Zephyrians fought with the desperation of people defending their homes. Their ships moved in perfect formations, concentrating their fire to destroy coalition vessels one by one. The orbital defense platforms fired continuously, creating a wall of energy that seemed impossible to cross. "We're losing too many ships," reported Carl Johnson from his position aboard the Hope's Light. "The planetary defenses are cutting us apart." Jake watched his tactical display as red dots representing destroyed coalition ships disappeared one by one. They were winning the Ein Die battle against the Zephyrian fleet, but the orbital defenses were exactly as deadly as intelligence had predicted. "Amy, can we shut down those defense platforms?" Jake asked. "Not from out here," Amy replied, "but if we could get a team onto the surface, they might be able to disable the control systems." Jake made a decision that he knew was dangerous, but necessary. "Tony, take your best pilots and escort a landing force to the planet. I'm going down to shut off those defenses personally." "Jake, that's suicide," Maria protested. "You're needed here to command the fleet." "The fleet can handle itself," Jake said, "but those defense platforms will kill us all if someone doesn't stop them. And I'm the only one who knows Zephyrian technology well enough to shut them down." Quickly. 20 minutes later, Jake was aboard a fast transport ship diving toward Zephyr Prime's surface. Around him, 50 Coalition Marines prepared their weapons and checked their equipment. These were some of the best fighters in the galaxy, but they all knew this mission might be their last. The transport ship shook as Zephyrian interceptors attacked it during the descent. Tony's fighter escort engaged the enemy craft while Jake's ship pushed through the atmosphere toward the capital city. The city was enormous, with towers that reached into the clouds and transportation tubes that carried millions of Zephyrians to their daily activities. "There," Jake pointed to a massive pyramid-shaped building in the center of the city. "That's the Defense Control Center. If we can take it, we can shut down the orbital weapons." The transport crashed into a landing platform near the pyramid. Jake and his Marines rushed out of the burning ship, and immediately came under fire from Zephyrian security forces. The aliens had been waiting for them with heavy weapons and energy shields. "Move! Move! Move!" shouted Carl Johnson, who had insisted on joining the ground mission. The old soldier led the charge across the platform, while Jake's Marines provided covering fire. The battle through the city was house-to-house fighting at its most brutal. Zephyrian civilians fled in panic while their military forces tried to stop the human advance. Jake's team fought their way through streets filled with alien architecture and technology, always moving toward the defense control center. As they got closer to their target, Jake saw something that made him stop and stare. In a large square, near the pyramid, thousands of aliens were working under the guard of Zephyrian soldiers. But these were not Zephyrian civilians. They were slaves from dozens of different species, building monuments to Zephyrian glory with their bare hands. "Look at that," said one of Jake's Marines, pointing to a group of human slaves carrying heavy stones. "They've got our people working as slaves right here on their homeworld." Jake felt his anger burn hotter than ever before. Even on their most important world, the Zephyrians could not resist using slave labor. They treated intelligent beings like tools, never caring about their suffering or their dreams of freedom. "Change of plans," Jake announced. "Carl, take half the team and continue to the control center. I'm going to free those slaves." "Jake, we don't have time," Carl protested. "The fleet needs those defenses shut down. The fleet is fighting for those people down there," Jake replied. "What's the point of winning if we leave slaves in chains?" Jake led his remaining Marines toward the slave work site. The Zephyrian guards were caught completely by surprise when human soldiers came running out of the city streets, firing advanced weapons and shouting battle cries. The fight was short but fierce. The Zephyrian guards were used to dealing with unarmed slaves, not trained soldiers. Within minutes, Jake's team had killed or captured all the guards and was cutting the chains off hundreds of freed slaves. "Can you fight?" Jake asked a human woman who looked like she had been a slave for many years. "Give me a weapon and watch me," she replied with fire in her eyes. Jake smiled and handed her a captured Zephyrian energy rifle. Around the square, other freed slaves were picking up weapons and joining the human Marines. Altarians, cetaceans, and members of species Jake had never seen before were all united in their desire for revenge against their former masters. Meanwhile, Carl Johnson's team had reached the defense control center. The pyramid was heavily guarded, but Carl's soldiers had learned how to fight Zephyrians in close combat. They used speed and unpredictability to overcome the aliens' advantages in weapons and armor. "Jake," Carl's voice came over the radio. "We're in the control center, but the systems are more complex than we expected. We need you here." Jake looked at the freed slaves around him. They were organizing themselves into fighting groups and moving out to free other slave camps throughout the city. They did not need him anymore. They had remembered how to be free. "I'm coming," Jake replied. He ran through the city streets toward the pyramid, dodging energy blasts from Zephyrian defenders and jumping over rubble from destroyed buildings. Inside, the defense control center, Jake found Carl's team holding off waves of Zephyrian soldiers while trying to figure out the alien computer systems. Jake rushed to the main control panel and began working on the shutdown sequence. The technology was familiar, but more advanced than anything he had seen before. Jake's fingers flew over the alien controls as he traced power flows and identified critical systems. Around him, the battle continued as more Zephyrian reinforcements arrived. "Got it!" Jake shouted as he found the main power coupling. He pulled out one of his modified mining charges and attached it to the control system. "Everyone out! This whole place is going to blow!" Jake's team ran from the pyramid as the explosives detonated. The blast destroyed the defense control center and sent a power surge through every orbital weapon platform around the planet. One by one, the massive guns that had been killing coalition ships fell silent. "Jake!" Tony's voice came over the radio from space. "The orbital defenses are down. The fleet is breaking through." Jake looked up at the sky and saw flashes of light as the space battle continued. But now the tide was turning. Without the planetary defenses, the coalition fleet was smashing through the remaining Zephyrian ships.